Welcome to track 2, part 2 in the Eiffel room at WordCamp Europe 2017. Yeah! Oh yeah, I think so. Okay. My name's Miller. I'm your MC for the day. I want you guys to just have the most awesome afternoon. And we have an incredible afternoon of speakers lined up for you. We also have a delightful space. And it is in space. Stars and stuff? Yeah. It's also worth noting that this is a room of delightful microclimates. Those of you who like to be a little bit chilly, just feel the air around you. The aircon kind of dumps cold air over there. If you're sitting over there and haven't got a jumper, we don't mind if you move to where it's hot in the corner over there. So, look around you. These are the people who are sharing your WordCamp Europe adventure for the next few hours, maybe for 40 minutes. Maybe you're going to move around, maybe you're going to stick around. We're going to have an awesome time. We're going to start off with some lightning talks. These lightning talks are about content. Content is what we're all getting from our authors, from our content creators, to our users. We're kind of trying to put as little in the way as possible. But there's more to it than that. There is real power, real skill, real technique in making that content get there the best way, get the most impact, and be the most powerful content it can be. WordPress is part of that. So is all the great expertise we've got from our lightning speakers this afternoon. They're going to stick to 10 minutes, so buckle up, pay attention. This is going to be intense. First up, Monique, Dubbelman, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. It's awesome to be here. And since I've only got 10 minutes, well, let's rock. I'm Monique, and I'm here to talk about information architecture. Yes, this works. And, well, what is it? That's the big question. We all love WordPress, don't we? And I don't have to ask you why. It's a great CMS, and we're all great website builders, aren't we? But when I say I build websites, do I know what I'm building, actually? Do you? Oh, what's going on? This talk will be too short to tell you what information architecture is all about. But I'm on a mission towards a better structured web. And I need you to convince your clients that information architecture is part of that. That will be hard because information architecture is the underdog. It's not very sexy and it isn't visible. But that doesn't mean it isn't important. If you take a look at these skeletons, apparently they're the same. They have the same components. But when you want to go riding, on which animal would you do it? This book on information architecture, which I strongly recommend, has got this story, which made me realize that often I'm not too aware on what I'm building, and neither is my client. It goes like this. There's this minister who walks past a construction site. And when he walks past, he sees two guys laying bricks. And he asks the first guy, "Hey man, what are you doing?" The guy looks at him, a bit disturbed, so like, "Well, can't you see? I'm laying bricks." And he's got like, "Oh yeah, obvious." And he asks the second guy the same question, say like, "What are you doing?" And the second guy answers, "Well, I'm building something great. I'm building a cathedral." And clearly impressed with the answer of the second guy, the minister goes home and he can't sleep and he's thinking about it. And he decides to go back the next day to ask this guy some more questions because he really inspired him. But when he gets to the construction site, only the first guy is there. And he goes like, "Oh, where's your partner? Where did he go? Because I want to ask him some more questions." And the guy looks at him while he's laying bricks and he said, "That fool, he thought we were building a cathedral, but actually we're building a garage." So when you're building a website, ask yourself the following question. Are you building a garage? Or are you building a cathedral? Or are you just laying bricks? And when you do so, do you use the ITER method, I think this is right? Or do you use some form of research or testing? because remember, you are not your user. WordPress helps us with the basic of installing a CMS, but it doesn't and cannot help you with organized and good content. And that content needs to be findable and understandable for its users. So if we move on to the definition of information architecture, I'll go for the very short one, because what you need to know is that it makes information findable and understandable. And to do so, we need some basic concepts of information architecture, which are information, of course, that needs structure, it needs to be organized, and it needs to be labeled. You probably all agree that findability is a critical success factor, and John Maeda said it earlier on. If a website can't be found, well, there's no use putting stuff on it. And the system will fail if the users can't find what they need. But when you design, don't design it just for the users. Use it for the organizations and the people managing the content as well. So why is it important? We suffer from major information overload. And however, this is not new. But you can imagine the growth of information has really sped up with the introduction of personal computers and the internet. And the findability techniques that were developed 15 years ago are not very effective today. And when we look at information environments like websites, there are not lifeless, static constructs. Rather, there's a dynamic, organic nature to them in both where information systems and the broader context exist. And when you look at these three circles of context, users, and content, you can use these in information architecture to find a balance and help them ask the questions you need to develop a good information architecture. And when we talk about context, we talk about business or organizational context. And this is unique to each organization. And the websites you build, well, the information architecture reflects this unique context. And you don't want that to look like the context of your competitor, do you? Next, talking content, that's when we look at the ownership, who owns the content, in what format does it exist, how do we structure it, is there any metadata, in what volume does it exist, and do we need more volume in the future, and how dynamic is it, will it grow old very quickly? And finally, what I think is most important are the users. And when we talk about users, remember, we talk about real people like you and me. It's not an abstract term. And these people have different information needs. I'd like to emphasize this. Remember, you are not your user. And what you think is right, well, your user might think different. So the final part of this talk is about how to do good information architecture. And I'm sorry, I don't have an answer to that. But when you look into your latest WordPress projects, be critical. And not only if it's a large-scale project, but also with smaller projects. And don't be tempted by your client to get into a rush and do concessions. Because most of your clients think information architecture is abstract, and they want to jump to the visual part of graphical design too quick. And when time and money are on a tight budget, well, you have to make choices of what to include. And again, these three circles will help you do so. Good research means asking the right questions, and it helps your user answer 4 questions they have themselves. When they go to a website, they have a question like, am I in the right place? Does it have what I'm looking for? And if not, is there anything better or anything else? And after that, they ask, what do I do now? And it needs to be clear. User research is very important because, in the end, the users are the ultimate judges of your website. And you can do some usage analysis by checking on content performance, visitor information, and search analysis. And I think the relevancy plugin is a good way to find out what people are searching for on your website. And always be testing. Even if you only do one test on a friend of your website, that's better than not testing at all. And you could use, for instance, this free card sorting method, which is online on Optimal Sort, or do a navigation stress test that you can find on Instone's website. You have to overcome resistance as well, because people don't really want to spend time on information architecture, and common arguments are like, we don't have time or money, or we already know what you want. But if you dig into the information system really good, they will have a website that actually works, and it will save them time in the end. And finally, I think developing an information architecture strategy is important because it can help expose gaps in business strategies and content collection, and it will force people to make choices they've thus far managed to avoid. So nearly there. I've collected some resources for you, and you can always check WordPress TV, check on information architecture to learn more. And my website has collected some resources as well. And I'd like to invite you to follow me on Twitter, because this is way too short, and I'd like to keep the conversation alive. So I've created this hashtag, WPIA. And yeah, hook me up. And to connect offline, I brought this swag, the WAPO game, that you can play all together and discuss the benefits of WordPress we all have. So thank you for your attention. That's it.
Thank you, Monique. Monique will be over at the Expert Bar in Houseman in between sessions, and later on, that's where we're doing Q&A for these sessions. So, Monique, thank you again. And now joining us on stage is Dario. Dario will be talking about... I'm going to stick with the Dario... yeah, so you get the microphone, and then we're going to start the timer when you get going. Dario is talking about writing, the actual powerful way you can craft your words to really know. Oh, yeah, he is, definitely. Yeah, just checking that one. Yeah, we're all on our toes here. Okay, Dario, when that's a clicker, yeah? And any second now we're going to be able to do that. Other announcements, yeah, there's toilets over there. Houseman for the Expert Bar. That's pretty much all the announcements. Next sessions are later on. We're good to go. On your marks, get set.
Ready. Hello. Thank you. So, hello. As you can see, I want to talk a bit about how some tips for writing better. I hope it helps you, and I also hope you have a good lunch. I didn't expect such a crowd, but let's get started. So, did you give me the right one? It doesn't work? So, whatever. Just shortly about me. This is me. My name is Dario Hrvatin, and I want to share that I work with the great company called On The Go Systems. You probably know us best by our plugin WPML for making multilingual sites, and we also have the other set of plugins called Toolset, which helps you build amazing sites. This is important for me personally because this is how I got this experience and what I have to share with you today. Because I am a documentation manager for on-the-go systems. So let's start with the first tip. It's actually the zero tip, the tools. So let's start with the browser spell checker. Please use the spell checkers because not using it today, I think it's lazy, and I really think it's a problem. When I see an email with spelling mistakes, I'm a bit appalled, to be honest. There are tools that can help you write better, like Grammarly, which I use every day, and things like Hemingway, you can look it up. So thanks to Andre, who suggested Hemingway, and I tested it, it's nice. Google Docs, Office Online. Why? Because they help you collaborate. And I think it's much better to collaborate together online than to just keep sending, you know, like millions of emails with Word documents or whatever. So, and the last part is the readability tools. I don't know if you use this, if you heard about this. There are online tools where you can input what you have written, and they use certain algorithms to just tell you like how readable your text is. Very, very nice. So I suggest to look it up. Okay, tip number 1, the planning. So this is just a screenshot from the guidelines we use on on-the-go systems when we go and write something like a documentation, a blog post, right? There are lots of steps, I agree. And I want to just focus on first 2 phases. The phase number 2 is writing. But as you can see, I don't write anything before I go through 9 steps, right? 9 steps. So you may think like, okay, are they crazy? Are they 9 steps? I want to write. I don't want to like overthink it, right? But here is an article from Yoast, from their blog, which I found, which is very interesting because it says the very same thing. It says, preparing to write is 40%, writing is 20%, and actual correcting is 40%. And I totally agree with them. And it's really true from my experience. So how to start? Create an outline for your document. Define the problem, define the goals, your target audience, where it's published at. Why? Because all of these things actually dictate how you write, what you write. Because, you know, it's not the same publishing like strict technical documentation or a blog post that can be a bit more relaxed or, you know, more leisure. And actually, last thing to do is like create an outline. So structure your document, and when you have this outline, ask someone to review it. Which brings me to the next point, is finding someone to review your writing. Now, who is a good reviewer? Actually, this depends on what you're writing and the context of your writing. It could be someone from your team, maybe a friend who is an like experienced writer, or maybe even a customer can review your writing. I don't know. It's up to you to decide. But even though reviewers will also often tell you things that you may not want to hear first, actually they're really a blessing, and they're like the best thing that can help you to write better. Tip number 3, this one is very important, is about measuring the results, learning what you're doing, and advancing forward. So, this point, this is one of the like really important points that happened in my writing. And actually, our company CEO, Amir Helzer, he helped me realize this, that it's not done, your writing is not done when you just publish it, you know, because my job, I know it sounds weird, but my job is not to write. It's not to publish things. No, my job is to help, I don't know, our clients, people who search for things that I'm writing about to achieve something, you know? Because when you search for how to, I don't know, display custom post types in WordPress and you find an article, you are looking to solve a problem. And the guy who published it, his job was to help you solve the problem. So I think this is very important in the way you approach the writing. And this is why I want to show you the process of improvement. It's constant, it's like repetitive, it's circular, just like life, you know? So you write, okay, you publish, nice. And then you should not just leave it there and hope that it's good. You should ask for feedback and you should measure, because as they say, data does not lie. But you need to like be careful when how you take a look at that data. And then when you see how the writing is doing, what you are actually achieving, then you can learn from this. And by learning, you can actually go back and write something new, something better, or you can rewrite what you already wrote, right? Cool. But this goes back to the goals. All of this helps you help your readers to achieve their goals. So this is true. Job is done when the goals are achieved. Okay, tip number 4 is about optimizing text for fast reading. Why is this important? As you know, we all read for a reason, including you and me and our audience. And we read to achieve our goals. So, we all know that when we come to a site, a page, we have like few seconds to realize, to come to a conclusion. Is this page what I'm looking for or not? And if it's not, we're just leaving. And I do it, you do it, we all do it. So this is why it's important to optimize text for fast reading, right? And how to do it? Structure. Start with the structure, good structure, descriptive headings that can be scanned easily, use images, of course, but use good images. Then use white space. White space is important. Do not cram everything. Just give people breathing room, and it's easier to follow. And all of this, including using nice paragraph, not like chunks of text that nobody can follow, helps people to scan your document, read faster, and actually decide and like your content more. So this basically comes down to the art of writing text that can be read fast. And this is like something you will probably achieve with time and experience. It doesn't come easily or fast. And tip number 5, keep developing your skills. There is always more things to learn, more experience to gain. So just few tips. But first, what do the best writers have in common? It's actually very similar to what the best musicians have in common, or anyone doing anything. So for writers is that they read a lot. And this is how they learn. They see what works, what doesn't work, what people like, what people actually use, and you can do the same. So this is why I suggest to read a lot. Try reading, like we have e-readers today, Kindle. I have Kindle, I love it. I can read it on a plane here. So read the blogs, read anything. Don't just focus on technical skills, read anything you can read. And then there is online courses like lynda.com. This one is like a nice example. And of course, practicing. I think writing is everywhere, so you can practice in tickets, emails, blogs, just write. So to summarize, use the tools, plan, find a reviewer, measure, learn and advance, very important. Write for fast reading, develop your skills, and most importantly, enjoy the writing. Thank you. Oh, sorry, man. Sorry.
You did promise you wouldn't run away with the microphone. It's all right. That was brilliant. Thank you very much, man. I have an extra little tip, actually, as well. A little cunning tip I had is I always change fonts when I proofread. It's a weird one. It's like you're reading it back in a different voice to the one you wrote. So the issue I have is like I'll write something, and I'll skip a word, but I hear it in my head. So if I read it again, it's still there. Change the font, and it kind of pops. It's a cunning one. Okay. That's all right. That's one for everybody. I'll be at the expert bar. Never, but, I could have been. Okay. Why would I be at an expert bar? Silly place to put me. Next up, we have Jen Miller. Jen Miller, everybody. Give it up now. Jen teaches how to be a total awesome SEO local sniper. That would be awesome. Can you do that for us, Jen?
Yes, I can.
Hit me.
Okay. Bonjour. I hear way too often from future clients, my website does not do anything. It looks great, but nobody comes to it. This has got to change. As the people who create in WordPress, we need to deliver websites that not only look great, but perform well. Many of us in this room can create aesthetically pleasing, well-functioning websites. However, launching with lorem ipsum text is never the key to an optimal result. Why is the question of content often reserved until the final stage of website development? Is it because content is created to fit the design? I think that's what many of us tell ourselves, but it simply is not true. Copy can be edited or augmented to fit the desired container, but it should be well developed as its own entity. Is it due to the perceived lack of importance? Often in discussions of copy, code, and design, copy or content is undervalued. And yet website content is the driver of website performance. Is it because it's the client's responsibility? This mindset is very limiting. When you accept the role of providing your client with a website, the end result, which includes copy, becomes your responsibility. Website developers must adjust their workflow to assist clients in creating local, relevant content. Does that mean the developers need to be the copywriters? Not at all. In fact, I would guess that there are many bloggers and writers in the room. Can I see by a show of hands? Perfect. Okay, use them. Content development is not about lining up strings and hooks. It's about utilizing hooks and stringing together phrases that engage your reader. The goal is to transport the reader to the scent of the cafe 4 blocks away, or remind them of the white sand beaches that are only a journey's drive. Content helps the reader to visualize the dream that propels them to click on that call to action button that makes the appointment with the hairdresser or the air conditioning salesman or the mechanic. Localized website content focused on the user pulls them in and transforms the user into a person with specific needs and goals that can be solved by that business. That is the goal, and that is why we need local SEO. Local SEO isn't a foreign language. You can learn it without Duolingo. SEO is an acronym that stands for Search Engine Optimization. It is a method of evaluating websites, causing scrutiny of code, design, and ultimately each word used on a website. Local SEO causes us to look at words as unique identifiers, similar to puzzle pieces, and local SEO brings those puzzle pieces into your neighborhood. Once the puzzle pieces are arranged correctly, an image begins to appear. And as the more puzzle pieces connect, the end result takes shape and a masterpiece is created. The same can be said of local SEO. The key to creating relatable, localized content is crossing over subject barriers to where topics intersect and ideas match up, returning a broader vision in search. This is not about inserting or stuffing keywords. It's about consensus and community. It's about bringing validity to that website's particular content by giving it relevance in the community. Local SEO without community is just keywords. Keywords by themselves do not deliver results. They must be woven into a message that speaks to the reader on a local level. Locality does not have to be geographical either. It can be defined by industry. You have the power to change your clients' results by teaching them to view their website as their community contribution. Explore with them how website topics relate to their audience. Then connect your clients to the people who can write conversion-oriented copy on those topics. Teach your clients that the website is the hub of all of their advertising, email, and discussion efforts, and that it's critical to their success. Quality writing, consistency, social promotion, relevancy, and area-sensitive keywords are essential to converting generalized text into content that matters. You'll discover that that content will elevate their website as it connects to other referrers such as YouTube, Yelp, iTunes, and more. It's important to understand that your client's mind that local SEO may refer to both paid and organic search results. The quickest way to be seen, literally overnight, is through paid advertising. While typically organic search takes more time, even months, to really shine. It's important to remember that and to teach that so that your clients have the correct expectations. Organic SEO is a process, not a get-rich-quick scheme. Organic SEO is about creating a system for getting found in search engines, allowing your website to rank higher for certain terms. The website must be evaluated from a technical and a creative standpoint. New leads come to the site for three main reasons. They want to take action, they need knowledge, or they are familiar and go directly to the site because they've already been on the page and they're returning. When businesses use advertising and organic search as companion pieces in audience targeting, they discover their audience is more real, has lasting results, and that the increases that they see are sustainable, not ad dependent, as customers who are local tend to refer more and become repeat buyers. Local viewers return to local websites and share by word of mouth and direct URL with a large regional audience. Local SEO also leads to search based on a location-based level and so that clients can receive the most relevant results. These results are ever evolving as voice search becomes more popular. When I mention voice search, I'm referring to virtual assistants, commonly known as Siri, Alexa, Cortana, and Google Now. How many of you have used these search tools in the last 2 weeks? Okay, some of you may have even used them without realizing it. But I'm not here to talk about voice search. But I bring it up because it's quickly becoming an essential tool for neighborhood businesses in local search. Studies have shown that voice searches for business addresses and local business information are done more often than getting the sports score or even finding out local movie times. Voice search goes hand in hand with semantic search as it relates to local traffic results. Location is essential in semantic search because the search looks beyond the words said and focuses on the intent. Rather than focusing on typical SEO based on keywords, semantic search takes a holistic approach, broadening the search and even offering search suggestions to help the user. This opens the playing field even more in terms of keywords and related terms. In many cases, people use different words when speaking than when writing. For instance, if I were writing that sentence, I may use the word language instead of the word words. See what I mean? Localized content steeps you in your community, in intent and environment. You create this by typing and tying in geographical references to your industry keywords. Montmartre dry cleaning, or emergency spot removal plus 75007, or laundry services plus 4th arrondissement. Localized content creates you as the expert in your community. Blog posts focus on current events, neighborhood hotspots and favorites, and nearby locations show that you know the area while at the same time tying those geographical references to your industry keywords. By combining local events and places with industry keywords, you can see success. Be aware that meta matters. When you take the time to create a localized blog post, you must pay attention to the details behind the actual content. Use your chosen localized plugins that will assist you in adding these elements. One of them actually will help you show your clients that your work is optimized, and this can be key in distinguishing yourself as a content provider. Once the content is created, correlate social posts if possible and keep it interesting. Earlier I mentioned intent. Make part of your intent to entertain. If a post seems boring, it likely is. People and search engines recognize this. Don't lose views due to a lack of enthusiasm, also known as passive voice. Link up to related information. Build the website up to be the local resource by linking it to other valued community websites, and you will be successful in local SEO. I'm Jen Miller, and I'll be local until the end of June, or you can find me on Twitter or LinkedIn at Jen Blogs for You. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Jen, and congratulations. You're certainly in the running for the Legion of Honor of keeping going without the cooperation of AV. So thank you very much, Jen. Next up is Syed Balkhi. Syed, you're going to be looking at repurposing content, I believe. Yeah. And being generally awesome in your awesome way. And so we're really looking forward to that. We're just going to make sure that the AV is behaving itself properly. That looks all good so far at this end. Without further ado, we're going to crack on to Syed. It looks like we're going to be having about a 10-minute break between sessions now, rather than the usual 20 minutes. Syed, take it away, sir.
All right. Can we get the slides up there real fast? Cool. Awesome. How you guys doing today? All right. Somebody asked me, hey, did you repurpose the slides too? Because the talk is about repurposing content, but there's not too much traffic. So I'm Syed Balkhi. I'm the founder of WP Beginner, Opt-in Monster, WP Forums, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm here to talk about a strategy that not very many people talk about, and that is repurposing. The problem is everybody's all focused on creating content. But what really happens is you create content once, you share it, usually once, and then you let it sit to die in your blog's archives. Because how many of you go on a personal blog, like if you go to syedbalkhi.com and say, let me see what Syed wrote in 2015. Really? You go to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Most people don't do that, right? So the idea behind is instead of coming up with new ideas, why don't you take the ones that are really, really working and repurpose them to get you more traffic, more sales, more subscribers, or whatever your goal is. So I'm going to share with you a process that we use and show you some of the successes that we have had with the process. Number one, you have to identify the right articles. Not every article is repurposable. For example, WordPress 4.8 came out. Now, 3 weeks from now, I can't repurpose that because it already came out. But if I have an article about speeding up WordPress, I can most definitely do that. So go in a tool called Google Analytics, and you want to look at the most popular landing pages on your website. You can start with the top 10. If you have a larger team, you can go in the top 20, top 50. Pick the ones that are getting a lot of traffic that needs updating. And then you start the repurposing. The one thing that worked really, really well for us was changing the content format. It's taking the blog posts and turning them into other mediums, such as video. So I also have a website called List25. It's a top 25 list site. You guys should check it out. It started out as a simple blog in 2011. In 2012, I decided to convert our blog content into videos. Nothing special. One of the guys in my team literally read the article with the images being the slideshow. And that's pretty much what we still do. And we have 2.2 million subscribers on YouTube with over 500 million video views, all by taking our blog post and just having somebody read it with a slideshow. People weren't doing it. Now, YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world, followed by the first largest, Google, and it's also owned by the first largest. So this strategy works so well for us. Said, why don't we do it on WP Beginner? So we started doing it. We have now over 600 videos on WP Beginner's YouTube, and we just passed 60,000 subscribers and have over 8 million video views, all by just taking the tutorials that we have and converting them into screencasts or just somebody reading out the list. And it works really, really well because some people choose to consume the content in video. So if you're not doing it already, start leveraging YouTube now. Repurpose your existing blog posts into YouTube videos. But it doesn't have to be just YouTube videos. There are times when we see an article that's doing really, really well that may have been written like a year ago or even 2 years ago. We go back and take a look at it. Can we make it better? Can we add something to it? And infographics work really, really well. An example of it is what the heck is a CDN? How to install CDN was one of our most popular articles on WP Beginner. But one of the questions that kept coming up in the comments was, what is a CDN? What does it do? So we decided to create a different piece of article from that existing article and add an infographic to it, and then we can link it all across. Same thing with WordPress user role management. We talk about different user roles, and we said, why don't we just combine all of them and have infographic comparison chart? So you can create infographics on top of your blog post, like go back, see if something's working really well, add to it. There's a really cool tool called PictoChart. You can use it, drag, drop, make infographics, and you can sometimes get lucky with Fiverr. If not, just use vectors from Shutterstock or Photoshop, and you can go from there. SlideShare is another one that I used to use. I don't use it anymore because the conversion opportunities aren't as much there. But you can take your existing blog post and convert them into slides. There have been times when I did that and was featured on the home page for so many days. I got a lot of followers on SlideShare, but not as much conversions. But this just brings visibility. If you're just starting out, taking one blog post and then converting it in different mediums, let that one blog post work that much harder for you. Create podcasts. Right? Podcasting is a hot thing. And my friend Darren Rouse, who runs ProBlogger, and I were chatting, I think a few years ago, maybe 2 years ago. Hey, podcasting is kind of growing. How should we go about tackling it? So again, you can repurpose your content. So Darren decided to launch a podcast with this 31 days to build a better blog course. So which started out as a blog post series in 2009 or 2010 actually, where he just decided to do a 31 days to build a better blog challenge. It was 31 days of tips after tips after tips, which he then turned it into an ebook and sold it. And then he used it several years later to launch his podcast, which now has millions of downloads. And I imagine he will probably turn this into a course as well, because big membership sites and courses are also taking peak. So again, repurposing content. Another good way is to create content upgrades and ebooks out of it. Everybody's familiar with ebooks. So if you have an article that's doing really, really well, you can turn that into an ebook and then have people download it in exchange for an email address. This is how you grow your email list. Content upgrades work slightly different. So you have a blog post that might be talking about how, like one of them on my website is how I increase my productivity by adding 5 hours to my day. And all I did was, started blocking all the different tasks that I do and batching them so I can work in focused batches. A perfect upgrade for this was, hey, you can download a worksheet, which was just this Excel file, in exchange for an email address. That acts as a content upgrade. We also have a list of 30 content upgrade ideas. And again, you see how it says updated. The reason why it says updated is because we went back and added a PDF checklist of things that you can do to create a successful content upgrade. And these things work really, really well. Just to show you some numbers, is that a general, pop-up or thing on our website is converting at 1% versus content upgrades, because they're so relevant, they're always converting in double digits, like 30, 40% or even higher. So adding this, just repurposing content, goes a long way. You can also use your most popular blog posts and turn them into engagement campaigns for your email list. And we do this quite often. So I don't know exactly how many days after you get this email, but you will if you subscribe to WP Beginner. Is your WordPress site secure? And in there, we're going to recommend our popular guide on the Ultimate WordPress Security Guide, and it will recommend, web application firewalls like Securi and several other solutions in there. But you can repurpose your blog posts, turn them into email automation campaigns. You can also turn them into courses and membership sites. I gave an example of what Darren could do, but you can see other people in their industry that are doing it. Yoast, for example, have several new trainings coming out, basic SEO training. But Yoast has been blogging about SEO for years. He's covered a lot of this content, now repackaging it, updating it, making it better, explaining it better, and turning it into training courses. Michael Hyatt did it with his best year ever, and then his get published courses. John Lee Dumas does it. Pat Flynn. Everybody that you know is doing this. And if you're not, you should be doing it. Content audit. This is something that we do routinely. Every 6 months we sit down, we create a list of all the content that we're going to audit. We update it, we rewrite it, we merge it, or we republish it. One way or another, it's getting updated. Essentially, here's an example. The Ultimate Guide to Boost WordPress Speed and Performance. This article, we actually first wrote it in 2009, and then updated in 2012, updated in 2015, and updated again in 2017. 25 most common WordPress errors. These are actually a compilation of 25 separate articles, just listed them. So it's a completely new article, and it's getting a lot of traffic, but it's nothing new. Same thing with our WordPress SEO guide. We've talked about these tips separately so many times, not just combining them into these ultimate guides, and pretty soon these are going to turn into ebooks as well. You can also create what I call collections or ultimate listicles. So we have written 15 different tutorials about WordPress menus, whether how to add icons or how to add this, and then we'll come out with a showcase article that says 15 best tutorials to master WordPress navigation, or 15 best tutorials to improve your Facebook traffic, and things like that. And all what it's doing is compiling the articles that we already have on our website and creating a new list, because list tends to get shared a whole lot. And all what this is doing is people are coming to it, and then they're going to other pages on your website, because these articles don't really give everything away. So you're increasing page views, you're getting the user to buy in, they're seeing so much value on your website, and they convert into subscribers. And the last thing is you got to reshare your content. Don't just share it once. Share it twice in a day, 3 times in a day. Share it the next day. Share it 2 days after. Share it 1 week after. There are tools out there that help you do that. Bulk buffer works really, really well with buffer. There's a tool called Revive Social. There's also CoSchedule that lets you do that. So don't just share your content once. Share it multiple times. And then just keep testing, learning, improving. Thank you very much. I'm Syed Balkhi.
Thank you, Syed. Thank you to all our lightning speakers today. Do please catch them in the expert bar. We're going to go for a really quick change around now. After the break, we are being joined by Miriam Schwab, introducing us to WordPress security for all. It's great to see security being a key part of the whole thread of WordCamp Europe this year. So for another slice of that, come back in about 10 minutes. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your day. Hope we see you back in here again. Thank you very much.
Welcome back, everybody, to Track 2 in the Eiffel Room. Hi! Are you feeling secure? Are you? Look around you. Do you feel safe? Do you feel secure? Well, you could do. You could get a grip on security. You could get a mindset which makes the work you do secure. And Miriam is going to tell you how. Miriam, delighted to have you with us. Are you ready to engage with this wonderful, beautiful Parisian audience? They're not just Parisians, actually. There are other people here, too. Yeah, I'm going to give you the microphone, and then you can take it away. Ladies and gentlemen, Miriam Schwab.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming to hear my talk about security, which is a difficult topic, but one that we all need to know about. And hopefully, I'll come away with a feeling that it's something that we all can achieve, because I believe we can. So first, I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Miriam Schwab. I'm from Jerusalem, Israel. This is one of my favorite views in Jerusalem. It's from the Mount Scopus area. For the last 10 years, I founded a WordPress development agency called Illuminea. We became one of the leading WordPress development agencies in Israel. And I've been doing that for the last 10 years. We've worked with many companies, startups, tech, finance, nonprofits. Me and my coworker, Rebecca Markowitz, we write a blog that I think quite a lot of people know called WP Garage. We write less than we used to, unfortunately, where we share our journey with WordPress and things that we learn. I have organized WordCamp in Israel 5 times. So luckily, WordCamp came up with a regulation that now you can only do 2 in a row, be an organizer twice in a row. So I'm taking a break from being the lead organizer, which I really need right now. But hopefully we'll be able to announce the next WordCamp in Israel soon, and you're all more than welcome to come. And recently, about a year ago, I founded another company called Stratic. We've developed and are launching now a web security solution, which I'll talk about later on in my talk. So aside from creating 2 companies over the last 2 years, I've also created a bunch of kids. I have 7. So that's kept me busy. And I don't know if we're going to have a lot of time for questions and answers at the end. I hope we will. Feel free to come up to me afterwards and ask me any questions, including about what does a crazy person do if they want to have 7 kids, and how do you manage all of that? So I'm happy to talk about that as well. All right, so let's talk about WordPress. So security is something that we're all aware of when we talk about. Is it because WordPress is truly a target? Yes, it is. CMSs in general, like Joomla and Drupal, are attacked 3 times more often than non-CMS sites, and WordPress is attacked 3.5 times more, so WordPress is a larger target. Why? If you're a hacker, you're looking for the best results for your hacking efforts, and because WordPress has such a large install base, it's worth it. If you find one vulnerability, you're going to find millions of sites that you can hack with it. It's also because, obviously, it's open source. That means that the code base is available to anyone, and also any vulnerabilities that are published are available to anyone. The other reason is that at any given time, it's estimated that 70% of all the WordPress websites that are available have some kind of vulnerability, which is kind of scary. And also, it's because, as we know, WordPress is quite a user-friendly platform, and pretty much anyone can implement a WordPress site for themselves or for clients. But you can do that without having deep coding knowledge or knowledge of security. And so a lot of the sites that are, a lot of the sites that are developed and launched aren't necessarily done with those types of things in mind. And that's why they also might be vulnerable. So, and let's just get into the mind of hackers for a second. Why does a hacker hack? So one is just plain old vandalism. They just want to deface and cause damage. Same way someone will write on someone's wall. That's the same thing here. It's just for the satisfaction of saying, hey, I got into your site and I made you unhappy. The other is, of course, profit. Many hackers get into sites in order to, let's say, redirect the site to affiliate links so that they can make money off of those ads, or to try to get credentials out of the site if they're stored within the site. A more recent development of hacking is to create botnets. So what happens is hackers will take the resources from multiple websites and also sometimes, let's say, security cameras, so that's a different thing, bring them all together, and create a powerful botnet that can then attack. And they will either use that to DDoS other sites, or they'll actually sell it. So how does this happen? These days, hacking is automated. It used to be that someone would say, hey, I want to target that site, and so I'm going to do that. And it's no longer like that. There are bots that are scouring the web. The statistics related to how much bot traffic is hitting our sites is really quite mind-boggling. It's at least 50%, and some people say even more, of the traffic coming to our sites are different types of bots. Some are good bots, like Google, whatever, and some are bad bots, like these bots that are looking to attack these sites and find vulnerabilities. WordFence, which is a great resource for security information, of course, they have their plugin, which I'll talk about. They did a survey to see why sites were hacked. Most people didn't actually know why, and that's definitely a problem. But those who did knew that it was because of a vulnerable and outdated WordPress plugin running on their site. So plugins are definitely one of the big weak points in our efforts to secure our sites. And today, or yesterday, the count on the number of plugins in the repository is 50,000, over 50,000. So it's 50,000 potential vulnerabilities. Why? Because you can't possibly vet and audit every single plugin for security. And also sometimes the people behind them stop developing them. And it's a lot of different people who are creating a lot of different pieces of code that we are then taking and putting in our sites. And that can create certain vulnerabilities. So these are just some stats related to plugin vulnerabilities. 73% of all WordPress installations studied had unpatched vulnerabilities. 20%, at one point there was a study done, and 20% of the 50 most popular WordPress plugins were vulnerable. And the average CMS deployment has 4 plugins. I don't know about you, but we often have more than that in the sites that we're developing. Another type of attack is brute force, which is where someone, also a bot, hammers your login page and tries to get in by trying all sorts of combinations of usernames and passwords. So a side issue with this type of hacking is, aside from that they might eventually be able to get in, is that it can actually DDoS the site. We've seen that with clients where the brute forcing happening was so frequent and strong that just that call to the login form brought down their site. So that's pretty crazy. Now, I put a picture of cupcakes because it's all so dark and I think we could use some colorful cupcakes in our life. So here's some greenish, bluish cupcakes, and we're going to talk about DDoS. DDoS attacks are when something like a botnet or some other large resource hammers a site with requests to view the pages to the point where the site slows to very painful speed or the server crashes. So how many of you guys have experienced any of those types of hacking or issues with your sites? Yeah, okay. Us too. Too many times. So I'm going to talk about solutions and different levels of solutions. There's different levels here for everyone. But before I do, I just want to talk a little bit about the security mindset. So as I mentioned, I'm from Israel. And in Israel, cybersecurity is very big. And through our own work, we just had to learn security just by nature of the work. We had to keep our client sites secure. And plus, we are connected to that industry. And so we've learned a lot through the years about this. And one of the things that people think about security is that they can achieve this holy grail security. And if I follow this checklist of things, then my site is secure and I can rest at ease. It's not the case. Every time you build a wall, someone's going to find a way to get over it. You'll make that wall higher. Same story. It's a never-ending cat and mouse battle. There's not much we can do about that. So because there's no way to achieve 100% security, what we're aiming for is low-hanging fruit, the things that cover most of the issues. And that's what I'm going to talk about. So it's never going to be 100%. So we're going to talk about things that you can do to your sites that cover the vast majority of issues that you'll face. Okay, so first of all, we're going to talk about level 1. And I truly believe, and in my experience, if you do these things, which are pretty easy to do, you are pretty covered. So here we go. Update. You must update. Everything. Just update. And I know that it might break things. I don't care. Do yourselves a favor and the entire internet a favor and update. And then you'll have to fix anything that breaks. That's just the nature of the beast. If you leave it vulnerable, your site can get malware, your visitors can get malware, and sometimes you might not even be able to recover. We've seen that with people who have come to us. So if you think it's difficult to update and remember to update, then just set it to do it automatically. You can add these bits of code to your WP config file. There are plugins that you can install that will automatically update. Especially the minor security core updates, make sure that that's happening. Personally, in our company, we don't do the major updates as soon as they're released, like 4.8. We wait for 4.8.1. But if you're going to forget to do 4.8.1, do 4.8 as soon as it comes out. Seriously, just update. If you have multiple sites under management, there are tools now that make it easy for you to like keep an eye on things and see if things need updating. So Jetpack is one of them. Manage WP, and Infinite WP. So these are 3 options. And Jetpack doesn't cost for this. Manage WP and Infinite WP do. I truly believe that we need to invest in our web presence. If it's valuable to you, sometimes the product that costs is the one that you need to use. But in this case, you can use Jetpack for this type of thing. But definitely, and you can set it to automatically update through Jetpack as well. So that's very useful. Backup. Like, I can't believe sometimes how many people I talk to who don't have backups set up. And yes, there are free plugins that you can use for backups, but there are a few problems with them, and I'm not saying you shouldn't use them, but you should just be aware. So one problem is that it's using your server resources a lot, and sometimes the backups might not be done to the end, and you can't be sure that they're reliable backups. And then when you need them, you find out that it's corrupted or incomplete. So maybe you don't pay for the dashboard to keep your plugins updated because you can do it in other ways. Like, seriously, pay for a good backup tool. It will save you. So these are 2, WordPress and BlogVault. We personally, in our company, we use BlogVault. It has additional benefits as well, these tools. Easy migration of sites from one server to the next, or even to a different domain. You can do test restores, which is excellent. So that's the way to see, let's say you were infected, which we've had this, with malware. You need to find the backup that is clean. So you can do a test restore until you find the one that's clean. No admin username. I know, like, we all kind of know this, so I'm just saying it. Just, like, no. Okay, so when you install WordPress, choose a different username. If you didn't, open another, like, have another admin username that you've created and delete the admin one. And you can move any posts that you have to the other user, but just, like, no, because that makes it easy for the brute force attackers. Limit login attempts. Again, that's related to the brute force hacking. If these types of tools will identify if someone from somewhere is trying too many times to log into your site, that's not natural activity, and will stop them from doing so. So hopefully that will prevent them from finding out your username and password, even if it's weak. So that's, I would say, really important, and also related to the DDoS effect that I mentioned before. So this is WP Garage. I think we started running Jetpack Protect on it less than a year ago, and this is the number of times that Jetpack Protect has identified that there have been malicious attempts to attack our site. So it's happening, and we don't always feel it. But, like, I'm so glad that 119,000 attempts failed. And so these types of tools can help with that. Passwords, obviously, we literally had a client whose password was, "I love my dog." Like, no, just don't use sentences and real words. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, even with an 8 or a 9 is still not secure, so just no. I would recommend using a password generator to create a complex one. So a lot of people recommend using password managers. I am afraid of them because they get hacked. I know people say you're ridiculous, you're too paranoid. So I have come up with an algorithm that I remember in my head in order to have a different password for each site. And I'm happy to explain that to you if you want. But basically, it's a pattern that changes for every site. And that's one way that you can have complex different passwords for each site and not need to use a password manager. Yeah, I'm a little bit crazy about that. So you can use password managers if you want. I just don't. Reliable hosting provider is key. So first of all, if you're not hosting on a $2 a month hosting provider and they're a decent one, then they are looking out for your security, like on the infrastructure level. But even more important is their support, because something's going to happen, very likely, and you're going to need support, and you want to know that someone good is on the other side. Over the last few years, we've been using SiteGround, and we've been very happy with their support. It's like magic. They respond instantly whenever we need. It's pretty amazing. So, but there's many incredible and excellent WordPress hosting providers for the WordPress community, and just go with someone who's good, seriously. All right, next level, security, rockstar level. All right, so users. Make sure that you have a minimum number of admin level users. We've seen sites where there's like 20 users and they all have admin level permissions. Don't, okay? 1, maybe 2 as necessary. Otherwise, just don't. And all user permissions in general should be as low as possible. So consider, does this person need editor level or author level? Just make it as low as possible based on whatever they need to access in the back end of the site. And delete or demote unused users. So you can put them to subscription level or make them inactive, or just delete them altogether, which is even better. Every one of these things is a potential gateway into your site. Plugins, same. Delete unused plugins. Every once in a while, do like a survey and audit of your site and see what is running in my site that I haven't been using and I don't need, and just delete. Okay? Be a little bit ruthless. And only install reliable plugins. So how do you decide or identify whether a plugin is reliable? So here's just a few ways. So in the repository, you have some data that you can access about every plugin. So in this case, you can see that this plugin was updated 6 months ago. So I would say that that's okay. Generally, maybe up to a year ago, it's okay. But the thing is, and it has a lot of active installs, but it's only been tested up to 4.7.5. It hasn't been tested on the latest version. That's a red flag. And I also look at the support section. I like to see if there have been responses to people's support questions. It's kind of a sign of whether the developer is still actively engaged and involved in this project. So in this one, there was a response 2 months ago, but before that, 5 months and a year and over a year. That would also be a red flag for me. Two-factor authentication. I think that this should be something that we're all using on pretty much everything. Definitely things like Gmail, Facebook, and your site. It's not so hard to set up, and you can do it for free. I think WordPress is not for free, but they have it built into their product, and Jetpack does have two-factor authentication for free. You can do two-factor authentication either by SMS or with an app on your phone. I prefer the app on my phone. I use Google Authenticator for two-factor authentication because I found that sometimes SMSs aren't reliable. They don't always arrive, and then you're kind of stuck. But there is something that I just discovered about having the app on the phone, which is a disadvantage. I had to do a factory reset of my phone, and all of the authentication connections were lost, and I had to recover them, and that was not so fun. So that is a disadvantage. But otherwise, it's really easy with the app. You just, enter code and you're in. So, but I would highly recommend it. Okay, level 3 of security, out of sight. So I'm going to run through it because it's a little bit higher level. So those of you who are on that level will hopefully get it, or you can Google it a little bit more, or you can obviously ask me about it as well. So first of all, HTTPS. The reason I'm saying it's on a higher level is because you have to rewrite the URLs in your database installation in order to implement it from HTTP to HTTPS. But just do it. Every site now should have SSL. And with HTTP 2, it actually runs relatively quickly, not like in the past. So aside from the security benefit, Google has been pushing it very hard and has made it one of the ranking factors in its algorithm. So if you want to give your site a little extra push in Google search results, you got to do it. I'm sorry, but you got to do it. This is really important. Obviously, only use SFTP when you're FTPing into your server. Don't use regular old FTP. You know how you can edit actual theme files in the admin area of WordPress? So don't make that possible. If someone gets into the back end of your site in some way, you don't want them to have that kind of access to your files. That's just a horror. So you can disallow it with this code. You can implement firewalls like WordFence has. I recommend updating to PHP 7. We found that well, it's known that it has security benefits, but it also has speed benefits. We found that some sites that we've upgraded to PHP 7 are running substantially faster, and that's also a pretty big pain point these days, so you could get that advantage as well. SiteGround has a very useful tool where you can like update just the environment of a particular site to PHP 7, so you can test it out and see how that goes. Again, it might break things, but in my opinion, it's like we got to go there. Check file permissions on the server. You can find the recommended file permissions in the WordPress codex. Okay, so database prefixes. This is like a bit of a debate in the WordPress community. If the database prefix is the default WP, does that make your site very vulnerable? So my opinion is as follows. When you're installing the site to start, I would change the database prefix to something more complex and not obvious. But if you've already got the site up and running with WP, I would say you can leave it. Changing it is a pain. And we found that that is not such a significant issue in terms of security. I'm sure there are people here who are going to disagree with me. That's just what I've seen in my opinion. So there you go. Keep your own computer clean and secure. Otherwise, you can send things up into the web and into your own website. You can use a CDN to try to protect against DDoS attacks to some degree. It's not always effective. And also to make your site faster and accessible to people around the world at a faster speed. Hiding the WP version, my opinion is meh, meaning, that's what meh means, I guess. That's my translation. Meh means eh. Like, some people say, like, you can. I don't know. Hackers can identify that your site is WordPress, and they're going to try to get in there anyway, so, but, just so you know. And create WordPress security keys and generate salts and put them in WP config. Okay. So that, I think, is, I mean, I know that was kind of a lot, but it's not rocket science. And it's the kind of things that I think we all can do to our sites. And really, the level 1 stuff, if you do it, you're in really much better shape. And in pretty good shape, actually. And as long as you've got backups, then if something happens, you can just go back to it. So even, beginner WordPress implementers or site builders or whatever we want to call them, or even developers, you can do those things for your clients, set them to automatically update. Yeah, they might come back to you 6 times going, oh, my site is broken, but like, at least it's not hacked, and then it's really difficult to clean up. So just some tools to keep an eye on your site as it's running and alive. So WordFence just released a tool called Gravity Scan. You can do once-off scans on their site to try to find malware and things like that. And they also have a paid service for ongoing scans. Sucuri, the same story. Sucuri is very well known. Also, will scan your site and find things. We haven't found that it always finds everything, by the way, but that was just us, and maybe that was a fluke. Google Search Console is by far my favorite tool for this. First of all, it's free. So, and in any case, if you care about how your site is doing online, you really should be connecting it to Google Search Console. You just need to authenticate it, and then you get data from Google that's like gold, seriously, and data that you don't get from Google Analytics anymore, like keywords that people use to find your site. But aside from that, Google wants the web to be a clean place. They don't want malware-infested sites in their search results. So as soon as they identify any sign of anything shady going on your site, you will get like 1,000 emails from them, but that's great because you will know immediately if there's an issue. So if you don't want to pay for these other services, really just connect to Google Search Console and like, we can rely on Google for this. They care about this kind of stuff. So do that. Jetpack has their monitor tool, which is excellent. We were using paid monitoring tools, which would report downtime to us. And the results with Jetpack's monitor tool are just as good, just as fast, and free. And that's obviously a sign of something going wrong with your server or your site. So it's very useful, and I would implement that. By the way, with Jetpack, when it first came out, I was like, how can they do this? They're like trying to force this on everyone, and I don't want a giant plugin that does 1,000 things. In the end, we use it for all sorts of things. They won over us. It's very useful. It's got some very useful functionality. Okay, so that was like standard-ish approaches to security. If you do these things, you're in a pretty good situation. Definitely have Google Search Console at the very least, keeping an eye on your site. Now I'm going to talk about completely rethinking security. So as I mentioned, for the last decade, I've been in the WordPress development industry, and I've seen a lot. And we've suffered from many things along the way related to security, and we've learned a ton along the way. But over the last few years, we found that it was becoming more time-consuming to keep our client sites alive and well. Instead of being able to build the websites for the clients, and progress with projects, we would find ourselves spending a day or two or sometimes a week, trying to fix something that happened, fighting DDoS attacks. We had one client that was on stage pitching to investors, a cyber company, and then their site was DDoSed. Nightmare. Okay, I have many more gray hairs with different web situations, names on them. So I've been thinking about so a lot of these approaches have to do with pushing back against the status quo. And I started learning about a new approach to web development called serverless. Are any of you familiar with serverless at AWS Lambda? Crickets. Yes, but that was me. I also hadn't heard of it. It's really fascinating and really interesting, and I personally believe that it's the future of web development. Basically, it's called serverless because instead of running a dynamic server all the time to process, just waiting in case someone needs to process some kind of dynamic functionality, versions of serverless. This started only 3 years ago. So the benefit of going serverless is that there's no database and there's no dynamic server running. So all of that attack surface, all of those vulnerabilities are actually eliminated. They're just not there. And these sites run faster because they don't have to do database queries for every page, and they're more scalable. So many sites are going this way, like Coca-Cola is migrating sites to serverless approach, but it's very expensive, very resource intensive, and WordPress it's such a great option. If you need your site to get results for you, generate leads, generate traffic, generate business, anything like that, WordPress is key. So how do we marry these two worlds together? And I came up with this idea for the new company that I founded called Stratic. And there's another company out there that's doing something similar called Shifter, which you may have heard of. So I'll explain to you how it works. Basically, we disconnect the dynamic code of the WordPress site from the rest of the web. And we put the WordPress site behind authentication. So only site owners can access that site, but no bots. But they can manage the site as usual. So there's no learning curve. Marketing people can still update content and all that stuff. Everything is the same. You can add plugins. As an agency owner, I don't want anyone telling me what I can and cannot do. So all of that's the same. Then you deploy those changes with one click of a button. Oh, and by the way, the bots that are trying to access the site cannot, so they go somewhere else. Bye-bye, bots. And so then you can deploy the changes that you've made, and they get deployed as HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, essentially the front end of the site. So site visitors are visiting an exact clone and replica of your WordPress site without the underlying vulnerabilities and issues. And these bots, they're there again. They're trying to find the WordPress vulnerabilities or the known open source vulnerabilities, and they can't hack them because they have been completely eliminated through this approach. And these sites, as a happy byproduct, they're also faster, and they scale when hit by DDoS attacks. DDoS attacks need much more resources to take it down, or if hit by a lot of traffic. So we're just actually launching now. We're very excited. I've been toiling and sweating and crying over this thing for a year, but it's now working. And so we would really love to talk to you guys about it and see if you are interested, and we can show it to you and also get your feedback, because I know that this is something that I want for my agency to solve my own pain, but we'd love to hear what you guys think as well. So that's a completely different approach. It's very new. It's very unique, but it marries the best of these two worlds of serverless and the awesome world of WordPress, which we love and which is so great for all of us and for our clients and for ourselves. So that's it. So thank you. This is a picture of me and the Mona Lisa bonding. It's such a hilarious experience. So yeah, that was the closest I could get, and I feel really close to the painting now. So thank you. If anyone has any questions.
Thank you very much, Miriam. I'll be passing this microphone back to you, but I think we're going to get some questions for all. Are our mic runners ready? Yeah, excellent. Okay. Now, the microphone setup in here is that we've got a couple of mics on stands down towards the front of the aisles. Gentleman there, you're sitting next to a mic stand. Could you give us a wave, please, so that people could... Yes, that's it. Just that chap there. He's got a microphone, and the other end of the row as well. There's one there as well. So if you're near the front, you've got a question for Miriam, pop down to one of those, and towards the back we've got some runners as well. So, do we have a question from the floor? Over there, sir. Yes, please.
Hi. Great talk. One question about the serverless approach. How do you handle with like comments? And
Very excellent question, which I'm sure a lot of people have. Yes, perfect. Discuss and Facebook comments. And for forms, at the moment we're using third-party forms, but we plan to develop an integration with the regular WordPress forms, like Gravity forms, which I love. So it has to work for me and everyone else through a proxy. But at the moment, because we have such an initial product, so it's Discuss and Facebook comments. Which in any case, we found a lot of our clients want to prevent spam and just make it easier to manage comments. And it also is actually kind of runs faster. So.
And we have another one over there. Yes.
You mentioned the authentication for the client.
Yeah.
What kind of authentication is it? Like, is it a password or is it like a token? Like, what is the process for the client?
So it's a very good question. So at the moment, it's a username and password. Again, because we're launching this minimal product, but the idea is to make it a little bit more complex. But one of the things that I forgot to mention about security is there's always this battle between user experience and security. So you don't want to limit your users too much. So our goal is to find a balance where it's highly secure. We likely will use Amazon's authentication services because they're very high quality and integrate well. We're building on AWS. But at the moment, yeah, it's a username and password.
Does it mean that the user, the actual admin, should type in its credentials 2 times?
Yes, exactly. It's 2-time credential. It's possible that down the line we'll remove that, but I think it's worth the security benefit just in case that they log in once to our system and then they log in again to their WordPress installation.
Okay, do you plan to make it one login system or something?
It's possible. Right now what we really need is user feedback, and so if that's a big pain point where it's 2 steps, then we would definitely consider it. But at the moment it will continue to be 2 steps, and and maybe we'll add that to the roadmap.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your question. Is that a person there?
Yes, I'm a person. I have a question. You put up the statistics from WordFence about vulnerabilities, but one of the things that wasn't on there were the users, as far as I could see.
Which users?
The end users of the site, the admins, for example.
Meaning being a vulnerable point?
Yeah, exactly. So my question is about social engineering and social exploits. What do you do to educate clients on phishing, on what emails they should respond to, which websites are actually real websites versus clones of their admin?
That's a really good question. So social engineering is definitely a threat, and we ourselves, even us as the site developers, can be a weak point. In the level of risk for our clients, it's actually pretty low. At least that's what I found over the last 10 years. If we were a bank, no question, there would be a lot of education going on. We do try to educate our clients in general about safety online in general terms, and they often ask us questions. Don't click on anything that looks even remotely suspicious. Look at the URL. That's basically the main suggestion. Look at the URL. If it says facebookcom.com, it's not Facebook, but it's in the whole point here is do the most important things, and actually that is a pretty low level thing for our clients, and we can always restore a backup if we have to. So, yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Hello.
Hello.
The obfuscation of the VP admin suffix. I think that it identifies any site as being a WordPress site. Should not.
That's a very good point. Changing the login URL, that ending.
I'm very surprised that it doesn't come as out of the box by WordPress.
So I do recommend it, but what we found is we started implementing it on sites, and then we had an issue, and just to fix the issue, we stopped, and it didn't make any difference that we put back the URL, because as long as we were limiting login attempts and we made sure that the clients had strong passwords and like basically whatever I said. It was okay. But yeah, it's an easy thing to do. Very good point. And you can do that, like create a different login URL for your clients. And it's just one more way to, what's it called? Security through obfuscation, or I can't remember the term. But yeah, thank you. Good point. Oh, there's another person. I feel like I'm looking into the sunset or something.
Oh, hello. I'm Tom Noel. There are a lot of things that people do to try and improve the security on their websites that are good intention, but maybe aren't so great for their sites, and that people have spread online. What do you think is the worst, the sort of things that are quite popular that a lot of people might want to do that can actually really destroy the security of their site very quickly?
That's a really good question. I've read so many ridiculous things, really, some really ridiculous things, but I'm stumped right now. If I can get back to you. But yeah, it's really important. It's kind of like the world of search engine optimization as well, where you'll read things and they're like, if you do this, you're going to do great. So the same here, if you do this, like, don't go overboard. You'll find these checklists of like 36, 40, 50 things to do to your WordPress site to make them secure. So first of all, you'll likely end up messing things up in a painful way. You don't want to ruin your own user experience, and just try to be smart. And also, I mean, this is based on 10 years of experience, so feel free to like not have to go through the pain to learn it. But you can also, you'll learn as you're going along, like what really makes a difference and what just is too painful to do. Kind of like changing the URL. We just found that it was like messing things up too much and taking like more time than we want to. And then when we stopped doing it, it was fine. So, you know, you figure it out for yourself, I guess.
Hi.
Hi.
I was wondering, you put the dashboard of WordPress behind an extra login. Why not an IP whitelist so that you don't have to log in twice?
Good question. It comes to the user experience thing. Like, we're all running around a lot, and so are our clients. Like, for example, our tech clients and our startup clients, they're in Tel Aviv, and then they're in San Francisco, and then they're in Europe, and their IP address is changing all the time. And then they would be in touch with us all the time to like update it, or someone in their office. It's like, it's a cost-benefit thing. Again, if we were a bank, probably, but for most of our clients, it's not worth that inconvenience. It would be too frustrating for them. That's why, essentially.
Okay.
Thank you for your question. Yes. Hi.
I have a question regarding database for serverless. How do you plan to handle it, or how does the user get a backup or something for serverless?
How do they get a backup of the serverless site?
I mean, for the database.
So the original site is in existence, and so that is continuously being backed up as well, just in case something happens, because things happen. So that's continuously being backed up, as well as the static site. And the benefit of that is that if something happens to the real WordPress site, the static site continues to exist. And also in WordPress, we can always have redundancies. So, you know, if something happens to one static version, we can easily quickly point to another one. So you can end up with like a whole bunch of possibilities if anything goes wrong. But the real WordPress site is constantly being backed up just in case.
But where does the database stay? Is it as an RDS instance, or how?
As a what?
As an Amazon RDS instance, or?
Oh, the databases are separated. What's that called again? Is that what you just said?
Amazon RDS.
RDS, yes. Yes, it's RDS. Exactly. So that's the other advantage, that if something happens, we can just reconnect it to files.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hello, I'm Phil. Just on Vrat. I have a question about the REST API.
Yeah.
As far as I know, it's enabled by default in WordPress.
That it's on by default. Yeah.
You can easily, for instance, list the user in your WordPress install. Would you have any experience or advice about the API? Should I disable it?
Oh, so you're saying that,
is it a major issue?
That the REST API could be a vulnerability, right? So for a long time, we would, let's say, turn off the XML RPC site file. We would disable it. We were suffering too much from it. but then that stopped being an issue for various reasons, so we stopped doing that. With the REST API, because it's so new, so far we haven't found that it's a strong point of attack. But I feel like we're going to find a day, like we did with XML-RPC, where some kind of botnet or something, or just general hackers identify this as a great place to attack, and we're all going to suffer from it. And then at that point, we're all going to consider disabling it. In the meantime, it seems okay. We generally don't disable or turn things off that have an advantage until they become disadvantageous. So that's just us. But if you're not using it, it's not adding any benefit, then yeah, maybe consider it. It's definitely going to be an issue. Like, in my opinion, it's just a matter of time. Like everything.
Okay,
it's the wall that just keeps going. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Try and squeeze in one more. Is that okay?
Sure, yeah, no, of course.
It's not even a question, it's a statement. I've seen a lot of WordPress security talks, and this one absolutely was one of the most comprehensive ones, so congratulations.
Oh, that's so sweet. Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it. Positive, you know how it is if you have clients, like they can all love you and then one says that they hate you and you're like, everyone hates me. So that means a lot to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Miriam. Thank you. That was brilliant. You're going to be around for the rest of the day. Excellent. Do catch up with Miriam. Actually, as a kind of a coda to some of the things you mentioned, there is in the sponsors workshops, there's a Jetpack workshop starting at 4 o'clock. So that if you were inspired by some of Miriam's advice to sort of get more out of Jetpack, that'll be upstairs in Houseman. We'll be back in here at 4 o'clock on the dot, and Julka Grodel will be exploring about PHP 7 and help you find out if your site is ready for that. Thank you again to our speaker today, and see you in 20 minutes or so. Thank you.
business organization unit, whatever you want to call it. You have some people at the top, and you might have some people in the middle, and you got people on the bottom. All the decisions are made up top. Now it's $1 billion challenge.
You can just reconnect it to files.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hello, I'm Phil, just on Vrat. I have a question about the REST API.
Yeah.
As far as I know, it's
Quick public information announcement. So, the next presentation, PHP 7, has got a little bit of very, very elegantly presented code, and the first slide includes a link to the slides so you can follow along on a local device. But what I am going to suggest is, because there's text on the screen, and if you haven't got a device, do remember to fill up this space from the front to the back, because this is a really long room, and we have noticed on some of the presentations, if you're sitting right at the back, text on this screen, lovely and huge and clear as it is, can look a bit small and far away. So, if you want to follow along in detail, fill up from the front of the room is my best advice. Thank you very much. We'll be kicking off in about 3 minutes. I hope you had some great breaks, some interesting conversations, some fabulous introductions, and a generally lovely time. We are back. This is the halfway point in this afternoon's track, and we're going to get into digging into whether your code is PHP 7 ready. This is Julka. Julka's here to explore this topic with us, to give us the real insights that are going to make all the difference for the new PHP version, and maybe we can all get off 5 and earlier things. And I got my PHP 6 qualification on the back of my phone. I'm that good a developer. Yeah. Okay, so as we mentioned earlier, a few bits of code. If you want to be down at the front, that's awesome. But this person is just also awesome. There are links to the code so you can follow along on your own lap. That's wonderful. But that's enough from me. So over to Julka. Take it away, please.
Welcome. Thank you for joining me today. So we're going to talk a bit about PHP 7. Is anybody excited about PHP 7? Yay, great. All right, so there is some code on my slides, and some of it gets a little small. If you want to pull up my slides, there's a link right there, and that link will be right back. But my name is Julka. I'm a software engineer at AddThis, and I'm the lead engineer on our WordPress plugins. We do a bunch of integrations to make it easier for website owners to use our tools. And WordPress is by far our most successful integration. And we do a lot of work to make sure it will run in as many environments as we can, whether that be different versions of WordPress or options to troubleshoot with themes that might be doing things a little oddly, and also PHP versions. So PHP 7 is exciting. There's new features in there, but if you don't get to use those new features for reasons like backwards compatibility, there's still some incentive to switch over to PHP 7, and that's performance. It's a lot faster. There's some impressive benchmarks out there showing the same code running on PHP 7 2 to 4 times as fast as it does on PHP 5. And with how much of the internet is generated by PHP, this has a cumulative possibility of really speeding up the internet for us. But PHP 7 has breaking changes. Some of the things we do in PHP 5 just don't work in PHP 7 and will throw errors. Other things that we do in PHP 5 work differently in PHP 7, and so they might not do what we expect, and they might break our themes or our plugins. PHP 7 is now the recommended version of PHP for WordPress, and that means we'll be seeing more and more versions of WordPress on PHP 7, more instances on PHP 7. There is a flip side to that, and that's that not everyone will upgrade. Not all new environments will come on with PHP 7, and we'll still have a lot of older versions of PHP to support. WordPress supports all the way back to 5.2.4. That's a magic number. 5.2.4 was released in August of 2007. It's coming up on its 10th birthday. It's a lot of years of PHP for us to be supporting. This is a graph from last night off of WordPress.org, showing the different versions of PHP that they see WordPress sites running on. That biggest sliver on there, that big red one, at 39.9%, that's PHP 5.6. But different slices of this graph represent everything from 5.2 all the way through 7.1. That 7.0 version there, that's highlighted at 9.6%. Last week, that was at 9.4, and a couple weeks earlier, that was at 9. So that is going up, and we are seeing more of these sites. But there are a lot of WordPress sites out there, as we all know. Even that small sliver up top, the 4.8%, that's PHP 5.2, that's a lot of WordPress sites out there that might want to run your code. If you're supporting a variety of customers or working on a public theme or a plugin, you might want to consider widening the versions of PHP that you support. All right, so the first step in this, I'm sorry, is testing. We can never get away from that testing. I'm going to talk to you about a bunch of things today you can look at when you're writing your code, and things you can use to make the process smoother when you're testing, to make sure that your code works in all the environments that you care about. But if you're not testing your code in both PHP 5 and PHP 7, you can't be sure that it's doing what you want. So that testing still needs to happen. But let's get into some of those things that you can be doing now, other than testing. So today we're going to talk about uniform variable syntax, It's the new way PHP decides how to evaluate dynamic variables. We're going to talk about some changes in for each, some removed functions, a changed function, a new rule around switch statements, a new rule about function parameters, changes in error handling in PHP 7, and a little bit about PHP 4 style constructors. So let's jump right into uniform variable syntax. So when we use other variables to create the names of variables we want to look up in PHP 5 we have a bunch of rules to memorize on what gets evaluated first. In PHP 7, they're aiming to make this easier with a left to right evaluation. We take the smallest part on the far left that we can evaluate, and we work off of that and move right. So that's different than PHP 5. Let's jump into some examples. So let's go through this one first and how it would be evaluated in PHP 5. We'd start off with $foo, and then we'd take that bar. So we'd treat $foo as an associative array, and we'd look up the key bar and grab the value from that. Then we'd treat that as another associative array and grab the key baz, the value at that. So let's say at this point we have a string with the text pink. So at this point we have the string pink. We put that $sign back at the front, and now we are looking for a variable called $pink. It's really round the way of getting to that. Here's PHP 7. We start with $foo. So we'll look at $foo and say in this instance that it's a string with the text orange. So here we're looking for a variable called $orange, and we're treating it as an associative array. We're going to look up the key bar, and we're going to take the value from that and treat that as another associative array. And from that, take the value at the key baz, and that's what we end up with. So here's that difference illustrated side by side with some curly brackets, the orange ones. As you can see, this gets evaluated differently in PHP 5 and PHP 7. So how do we write code that can do this in both places? Well, the answer is those curly brackets. We add those in. If you're writing PHP 5 code and your code is doing what you want it to, and you want it to evaluate the same way in PHP 7 for this statement, you take that first line and use that in your code with those curly brackets. And PHP 7 will understand that it needs to evaluate everything inside the curly brackets before it goes outside of them. And the same way, if you're developing in PHP 7 and you want to make sure that this variable gets evaluated in the same way in PHP 5, you use the curly brackets on the second line and tell PHP 5 that $foo needs to be evaluated together, and then it'll go on to the rest. Let's go through one more example like that. So the way this would evaluate in PHP 5, we'd start off with that $bar and treat that as an associative array, look up the key baz and grab the value from that. Let's say that that is the string green. And then we go back and we grab $foo, treat it as an object, and we're going to be looking up a property on $foo that is called green. So we're looking for $foo, arrows, green. From there, we treat it as a function and we execute it. Here's what happens in PHP 7. We start with $foo. We treat it as an object, and then we go to $bar. Let's say $bar is the string blue. So now we're looking up the property blue in the object $foo. From here, we treat that property blue as an associative array. We'd look up the key baz in there, grab the value, and then treat it as a function and execute that function. Again, very different from PHP 5 and PHP 7. So if you're writing PHP 5 code, and this code does what you want it to without those curly brackets, you want it to behave the same way in PHP 7, you'd use that first line with the curly brackets, and PHP 7 will know what parts to evaluate how. And if you're writing in PHP 7 and everything's working the way you want it, you can add curly brackets in the bottom part, and then PHP 5 will know to evaluate it that way as well. There's another change in variables in PHP 7, and that's globals. So in PHP 7, we can't say global $. In PHP 5, it's perfectly valid for us to say this, global $foo, arrow bar. But in PHP 7, this will throw a fatal error. And that's because of those double $signs. The solution here is really simple, and it's more of those curly brackets. With this, PHP 7 will be happy, and this will work in PHP 5 and PHP 7. All right, there's a couple changes in for each when we iterate over arrays. And the biggest one is that for each doesn't change the array's internal array pointer anymore. An array pointer is a place that PHP tracks of what it should look at next in that array. Not everything's going to use that array pointer, but some things do. In PHP 5, that array pointer changes as we do a for each over a function. In PHP 7, it doesn't. To look for places in your code that might be depending on that array pointer, I suggest looking through your code base for uses of the current function or the reset function. Those are the ones I use the most often that manipulate that pointer, and that'll give you a heads up of places where you might need to rewrite your code and logic to not depend on that pointer changing in a for each. There's also a change in for each by value. So when we do a for each by value, we'll say for each $array as $value. In PHP 7, what happens behind the scenes is that it takes $array and it makes a copy of it, its own copy that you don't use directly. And it will iterate through that copy of $array. It doesn't actually iterate through $array itself. What this means is if within our for each loop, we add in more items onto that array, we're not going to end up looping through those items because we're actually working on a copy of $array, not it itself, and that copy hasn't changed. This also means that if you're doing things in in your for each loop that are looking ahead of where you are now and making changes in $array for things that you'll loop through later, those won't be available to you in $value, those changes, because you're actually working off of a copy again and not $array itself. For looking ahead, you can sort of get around this by asking for the key as well. So $array as $key arrow value. And then you can use that key to grab the value that you need if it might have been changed other times. If you need to add things onto your for each, then we can do, and still loop over them, we can do a for each by reference. So for a for each by reference, this has changed a bit in PHP 7, and the change is that you can now iterate over things you add to the array as you're going. You couldn't do that in PHP 5. So for each by reference, what we do is we say for each $array as ampersand $value. That ampersand is the reference. What that means is when we're in that for each loop, that $value is actually the thing that is in $array. And if we change something in $value, it's going to change in the array as well. So be careful with this one. This one would solve an issue if you need to add things onto your array and iterate over them as well. But be careful with any changes you do to $value because those changes are going to stick around. You don't want to do anything destructive to setting to values in there that you might care about. All right, remove functions. So functions deprecated in PHP 5 have been removed from PHP 7. The ereg extension for PHP was deprecated in 5.3, and that is now gone for PHP 7. It's not available, but you can use PCRE instead. The MySQL extension was deprecated in 5.5 and is no longer available for PHP 7, but MySQLi is a drop-in replacement extension. That means that you should be able to simply change over those MySQL functions to, say, MySQLi instead of MySQL, and they should work right out of the box. All right, split. This function was deprecated in 5.3, and it is now gone in 7. Split would take 3 parameters. It would take a pattern, which could be just a string or a regular expression, as its first parameter. Its second parameter would be a string you want to search through, and then optionally you could give it a limit. -1 meant unlimited, but you could say 5 and only get 5 results. This would look through string for your pattern and break that string up into an array and return you an array of those different parts. So if you give it a paragraph of text as your string and a space as your pattern, it would break it up by word and give you back an array with strings for each word in the paragraph. We can't use this in PHP 7, but there are alternatives we can use instead. So option 1 that I would suggest is the function explode. There's a caveat. This function only works for you if that pattern you're using is a string and not a regular expression. It has a very similar signature. It'll take that pattern as your first parameter and your string as a second, and then a limit. Its limit works a little differently, though. If you're giving a positive limit, you don't need to worry about the changes. It works just the same. And if you're leaving that limit off, it works just the same. Leaving that limit off will give you unlimited results, however many come out of that string. But where in split, a limit of -1 meant unlimited, in explode, a limit of -1 means chop off my last result. -2 would mean chop off my last 2 results. So if you're using that limit and putting a -1 in there for split, you'll want to change that a little for explode. Another option is preg split. And this one is basically a drop-in replacement. You can use this for both strings and regular expressions, but it will be a little slower than explode for you if you're just using a string. And it is a drop-in replacement. We've got the same first 3 parameters, pattern, string, and then limit. The limit behaves the same way, and then we have an extra parameter that would change the way the regular expression is evaluated. All right, changed functions. I want to talk to you about list. There's 2 changes to how list works in PHP 7. So list is a little weird, and the syntax isn't your general assigning variables values syntax for PHP. So the first item here, for example, says list $A, $C, $D, and then equals an array with some strings. What list will do is it'll take the strings in the array, or any values that you have in those array, and populate them into those variables that you put in as parameters to list, so B, C, and D. B will become the string apple, C will become the string banana, D will become the string carrot. Now, the difference for PHP 5 versus PHP 7 is the order in which it assigns those. If you're using it like this first example here, you don't need to worry about this. But in PHP 5, what happens when PHP comes across this list is it goes to $D and it puts in the value carrot. Then it goes to $C and puts in the value banana. Then it moves on to $B and puts in the string apple. In PHP 7, that's reversed. So first it'll put apple into $B, then it'll put banana into $C, and then carrot into $D. Now, when we're using it this way, that doesn't matter to us. Everything works in the same, that order isn't going to affect us. But if we're doing something fancier with list, it might. So in the second line here of code, instead of putting those values into a variable, I'm pushing them onto the end of an array. So I have a $A brackets, $A brackets, $A brackets. And with this, the array that I get in $array is different from one version, from PHP 5 to PHP 7. So in PHP 5, I would get carrot, banana, apple. In PHP 7, I get apple, banana, carrot. All right, there's also another use for list in PHP 5 that is gone in PHP 7. I'm not even sure how well documented this is, but it does get used in some places. And this is a weird use of it. So you could put a string into a variable. So say we have $string and we put in the string hello. We could then say list $B equals that string. And what list would do would be to explode that into an array with one character per item in the array. So we end up with an H, an E, another L, another L, and another O. Now this was tricky in PHP 5 because you couldn't say list $B equals quotes hello. That wouldn't work. You had to put it in an actual variable, and then it would work for you. But we can't do this in PHP 7. An alternative for this is string underscore split, str split. And this will give us the same result, though it is a more common format for assigning. So if we wanted to make if we want to put that array in $B, we would say $B equals string split, and then the string hello. All right, switch statements. There's a new rule in PHP 7 for switch statements, and that's that you can't have multiple defaults. PHP 5 didn't care. You could put as many defaults in there as you wanted. It would ignore all of them but the last one. PHP 7 will throw you a fatal error. But the fix for this is pretty straightforward, because now you know that it only uses that last one. If you run into this, you can just delete all the earlier ones, and you should be good. All right, function parameters. There's a new rule for those in PHP 7. Functions cannot have multiple parameters with the same name. PHP 5 didn't mind this. You could write a function foo that took two parameters, $bar and $bar, and everything would run fine. You'd get the second value passed into that function for $bar, but it wouldn't complain to you about it. PHP 7 will actually throw an ecompile error if you do this. Again, the fix for this is pretty straightforward. Either you can clean up your code to not reuse the same variable name, but if you're trying to match the signature of another function, you could just rename that first one to something you don't use. So I could say $bar1, $bar, and then leave the rest of my function as it was, because that second one was the one being used. All right, error handling. There's a lot of changes in error handling in PHP 7, and that's primarily that they mostly throw exceptions now instead of errors, including fatal and recoverable errors. What this means is that if you come across a fatal and recoverable error, you could do a try catch, catch that, and then continue running more code. There's a lot of care put into this to make it backwards compatible in PHP 7, but I do know of one instance where it's not, and that's if you use a set error handler function. So the set error handler function takes a parameter of another function, and it'll execute that function whenever it gets an error. So you could use that to maybe log those errors to a database or do something special with those errors. The difference here is in PHP 7, you're not going to get all the same errors caught by this as you did before, because some of them are going to come out as exceptions. So if you're actually using set error handler, you'll want to look a lot more into the changes in PHP and error handling. All right, PHP 4 style constructors. This is the one thing on here that I'm talking about that's just deprecated and not yet removed. In PHP 4, when we created a class, we would create our constructor with the same name as the class if we wanted a constructor. So class foo would have a function also called foo, and that function would be our constructor. If we said new foo, that function foo would execute for us. This is deprecated in PHP 7, but it's still around. So if you're using it, it'll throw some notices for you, but it shouldn't break your code. In PHP 5, they introduced this constructor instead, __ construct. And so here, if we asked for a new foo, that function __ construct would be executed. This is completely valid in all the versions of PHP. So what PHP 5 would do here is it would use PHP 5 and 7 would use __ construct as a constructor and ignore function foo. You could call that in another way if you want to use that somewhere. All right, so we've talked about uniform variable syntax and how it makes it easier for us to understand how our dynamic variable names are going to get evaluated in PHP 7. We talked about 3 different changes for each. Some removed functions, a changed function, a new rule for switch statements. You can only use one default. A new rule for function parameters in PHP 7. You can't reuse the same variable names for your parameters. Error handling and how a lot more of it is now exceptions that you can catch, including some fatal and recoverable ones, and PHP 4 style constructors. I think this is also a good time for us to talk a little bit about PHP documentation. This is a screenshot from php.net. I use this constantly when I am writing code, even for functions that I'm very confident I know how to use. It takes an extra 30 seconds, and I can double check what versions of PHP it's supported in, as well as check the in and out and make sure that I'm using it as intended. So let's look at the documentation for a couple of the functions that we talked about. Here's the documentation for Split. And over here, we can see that Split is available to us in PHP 4 and PHP 5, and notably, not PHP 7. We also have a warning down here letting us know it was deprecated in 5.3.0 and removed in 7.0.0. It even goes on to suggest different functions we could use in its place. Here's the documentation for list, and here are the PHP versions. So we've got PHP 4, PHP 5, PHP 7. We're good. We get to use this one. If we scroll down further, we also have a warning that tells us about the difference in what the order that values get assigned in PHP 5 versus PHP 7. It's right there for us to look at anytime we want to use list. All right, here's a more complicated one. Array replace recursive. So here we see that it's available in PHP 5 and PHP 7. But it's available in PHP 5 for versions 5.3.0 and newer. That magic version for us with WordPress is 5.2.4. That means that there are WordPress sites out there, up to date with the latest versions of WordPress, that can't use this function. And that would be the versions that are 5.2. That's about 4.8% of WordPress installs. Now, usually when I run into this, I'll make an extra effort to find a different way of doing what I need to do in a way that will work across all the versions of PHP I need to support. And I can usually find pretty simple ways of doing that, though sometimes they're a little less elegant and there may be some extra steps. This function is actually an example of one that I use anyway. And here's how I get away with that. So there's a place early on in our plugin where I check to see if array replace recursive exists. If it exists, then I'm good. I can go on and use it. And that means that I'm either in a version of PHP that's 5.3.0 or newer, or someone else has already come in and polyfilled it for me. If it doesn't exist, then I go ahead and define it. I could probably do a better job of defining it than I have here, because I only take 2 parameters, and the real one can take any number of parameters, but this works for my purposes. All right. I also wanted to share with you some more resources for looking up changes in PHP. I talked to you about the ones I've seen the most, but these articles will talk to you about migration and incompatible things between 5 and 7. The next one talks about the deprecated functions in PHP 7 that have been removed, the deprecated in PHP 5, removed in PHP 7, a bit about PHP 4 constructors, and then the last one is about things deprecated in PHP 7. All right, so I hope I've left you in a better position to get your code working great in all the 10 years of PHP that WordPress supports. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you very much indeed, Julka. That was an extraordinary amount of information to share in a pretty compressed time period. I'm sure there are opportunities for further deep dive right now. Are you going to be around maybe over the expert bar after this? Okay, well that'll be an opportunity to properly deep dive as well. But while we've got you here, are there questions from the floor around today's discussion that we'd like to follow up with right now? If you have got a question from the floor, the microphones are just about 8 rows back on either of these aisles, in the Arctic zone over there, or the slightly warmer half over there. It would appear we do not. Okay. Okay, well now this is a real challenge for me, because I thought what I would do is, I could contribute a question. I'm not a developer. Okay.
All right.
But here's a question. There is a question, I guess, which is like, if you're not necessarily a developer, if PHP isn't a part of WordPress that you would necessarily get to on a day-to-day basis, are there areas of the differences moving to PHP 7 that someone can, as a non-developer, sort of keep an eye out for, signs to look for, or things that are there classes of plugins maybe that you think could be problematic? Something for the non-developer community.
So I don't remember the name of it, but there is a plugin that will actually scan your plugins to let you know whether or not it finds anything that might be a problem in PHP 7. I can look that up and tweet it out later.
That would be awesome.
It's not foolproof, but it does go in and check for, search through the code for things that are likely to be problematic and let you know about those before you upgrade.
Okay, and what's the general sort of spread of PHP 7 across most of the hosts that people will be using these days? Are there any sort of dark areas where it's still...
Not that I know of.
Okay.
We haven't had much problems with it.
Okay, jolly good. More questions then from the floor? If not, what I think we'll do is we'll wind up now. Everyone can have a very nice, salubrious, relaxing break and exchange and move around. Further in-depth conversations, I am sure. We'll be returning back into this room in some time now for Dmitry Mayorov exploring the world of how to get started in theme designs, and please do learn from the mistakes of others. It's always the best way, I think. I find some of the lessons that we've been shared this afternoon may have been found by, oh my God, it does that when you flick to PHP 7. Maybe, I don't know. No, probably not. All very smooth. So thank you very much again. We'll see you back here in half an hour. Remember to catch up with the tribe meetups and the sponsor workshops in Houseman. That's it for now. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Hello! Oh, come on, guys. Hello, Paris! Okay, fantastic. Thank you all for coming along. This is the last section of track 2 of day 1 of WordCamp Europe 2017. We're going to end on a high. We're going to end on a fabulous piece of sharing, some knowledge, some hard-won code-face, trench warfare knowledge from Dmitry. Dmitry has been there in the trenches, learning how to be a theme developer, and he's going to share his expertise, his battle scars, so you don't have to. But you probably will anyway. And when you do, you can share those war stories again with Dmitry. So I'm going to, just to keep things rolling along nice and quickly, are there any other announcements to do really right now? I don't think there's any. T-shirts. Oh yeah, remember to get your swag from the swag store in Houseman, which is just across the way, next to the lovely the swag store from WordPress.org. And remember, the sales from that are going towards a great diversity charity, so that's a cause well worth supporting too. But yeah, we're going to crack on with the last session of the day. Please, would you give a great big Parisian welcome to Dmitry Mayorov.
What's up, guys? How are you feeling? Great? Just got locked my Mac. Give me a second. So, we are going to be talking about design today. And I will share with you some of my experience of running a theme shop. A theme shop called Theme Patio, and I will share with you some insights of designing themes and some mistakes I've made along the way, so hopefully you won't make the same mistakes and save yourself like several years of your life. So it all started back in 2011 when I was working on a project for a client, and I discovered those theme marketplaces. And the idea that I can create themes and sell them instead of working on one-time projects inspired me so much that I quickly just jumped to Photoshop and started creating layouts. I created this first theme, tried to create this first theme, and created a front page, and created another page and another one. And it took me about, to be honest, 6 months, because I was working on client projects at the same time. I was working in a printing company, and this was like a side thing for me. And after I've done all that, I realized that those pages, they don't align, and I didn't even have the idea of what this theme should do and for who I am building this theme. So I thought that I do have these layouts, I need to develop them, and I don't really know how to do that, so it will probably take me even more time to learn. So I started learning how to build themes, and it took me even more time to learn WordPress and to understand how it works, how actions, filters, and all those things work. And it took me another several months. And after that, after a year of work and realizing that I don't have a product to sell, I thought that I need another kind of approach, because this approach that I had really didn't work. So, Okay, so I decided that I need to research the market and understand what kind of themes I can build to I mean, there are many kinds of themes. One, big themes that try to solve all kinds of problems, and small themes. And I understand that being a one-man theme shop, I cannot create big projects, big themes. So I thought that I can create niche themes that would be dedicated to one problem. So I decided that my approach at this time should be this. I need to ask why I designed a theme. And this is really important because if you have the answer to this question, you can filter all your design decisions through this question. And the simple answers to it can be like this. You can design a theme to showcase your work, or to sell products, or to promote an event. And the wrong answers to this question are like make it look cool, or earn a lot of money, or include more options than another theme. And basically, this like three-letter answers will lead you to nowhere. And if you design themes with a clear understanding of why you're designing it, it probably will get you further than without understanding. And like I did with my first theme. So once you have answered to this question, there is another very important question that you need to answer before you even get to design. And this question goes like this: who you design the theme for? And it is very tricky because what I see that is that many developers and theme shop owners tend to think that they are designing themes and creating themes for people who purchase their themes or download them for free. But in reality, I believe that we as theme shop owners, theme designers, theme developers, we create themes for actual people who visit the website and not for people who purchase their themes. But we need to find balance so that people who create websites themselves and can also do it without any problems. So these are top answers to the question who we design the theme for. And the wrong answers to this question is like people who buy the theme, or like parents to make them proud of you. All right, so this is like top two questions that I believe you need to answer before you get to design anything. Now moving, so once you understand who you design the theme for, you understand the expectations of those people. You understand what questions do they have, what fears do they have, and this really helps you to filter your design decisions as well. All right, so now moving to actually how to design the theme once you have those questions on why and who. All right, so the first step in designing a theme, like in my approach that I learned by creating websites for clients, for my own theme shop, and reading books, is to create a sitemap. Simple sitemap may look something like this. Each rectangle represents a single page, and basically what sitemaps gives you is a big picture of a project. You can see the user's journey towards the conversion, where he converts from site visitor to a subscriber or to a customer, and something else what you're trying to achieve. It also gives you a number of pages that you need to design, and it can be very helpful when you need to put a quote on your work if you're doing the design for a client, because once you know how many pages you need to design, you can like give an estimate on how much time do you need, and this will help you to understand the project better. So the next step is create wireframes, and it may sound pretty like simple, but without wireframes, it is still hard to understand what actually you need to design. And what wireframes give you is the ability to iterate over many ideas quickly. We don't design yet. We exploring. We can understand what we need to design in future. So wireframes give you a more detailed picture of a project, and also understanding of what design elements you can reuse. And it is very helpful because it will save you much time during the design process and also during the development, because when you have those designed beforehand, when you have those elements beforehand, when you understand what elements Or you can like create them and basically create multiple pages with them when you're designing. So, and this is like an example of a wireframe. It is very important to create wireframes quickly because, like I said, we're not designing yet, we're exploring ideas. We need to spend like 2 minutes on each page and not more than 2 minutes because time is money, time is everything we have. And this is an example of as I think, not a very good wireframe because you see all those shades and images. It looks like a design already. You don't need to use Photoshop to create, to go further. All right, next step is to start with a style guide. Again, we're not designing just yet. We are creating a style guide. And what style guide gives us is the ability to create basic elements that we can reuse later. And what we can include in the style guide is like basic typography, headings, paragraph, footnotes, block quotes, and other typography elements. Interaction elements like buttons, like info fields, text areas, checkboxes. And don't forget that those have multiple states. It's also important to design those multiple states as well. Also, like I said, in the style guide, we can include other reusable elements like images, if they have captions, or user profiles, or modal windows, or notifications, and things like that. All right, now, once we have the understanding of why we designed the project, of who we designed it for, we have those, the sitemap, we have the wireframes, and we have the style guide. At this point, it is really, really easy to create the pages. And by the way, if you're using, if you have Scan on your iPhones, you can scan this code and look at the basic style guide that I have in my latest theme. So, at this point, you may ask me why your talk is about design and you're not like telling us about typography rules, about color schemes and grids and things like that. And the reason for this is that I already gave a talk on typography at WordCamp US in 2015, and you can watch that. But also because there are people who can teach you about typography and grids much better than I can do. And once you read the book called Elements of Typography Style, which I totally recommend, you will understand how typography works, what basic rules there are, and how to use them. And the same goes for grid system and graphic design. It's a perfect, great book, and it applies to printed, like graphic design and web design, and if you think of it deeply. All right, fun stuff. When we have the style guide, when we have sitemap and wireframes, we can actually create pages. We can actually get to design. At this point, we are all designers, right? We imagine how the website will look, and it will really take not too much time to create pages with the basic elements that we already have. So my advice at this point is to start with the conversion pages, like the pages when people actually purchase the product or become subscribers or add comments to your blog post, because these are actually the pages where magic happens. These are pages that that are most important for the project. And if you design those pages, first you have like more, how do I say it? It's really easy to start from the bottom and go to the top, because you have the ability to test your style guide and to make adjustments to it. And this is actually, well, usually this is my approach, and you can test it and see if it works for yourself. Okay. One of the questions that people ask is what software to use to design themes. And the answer is simple. You need to use software that you are most efficient with. And because I have a graphic design background, I worked at a printing company, I like InDesign because it has great tools for working with styles. You can create styles for for all your text elements and object elements, and then reuse them, and it's really efficient for me. But also, Sketch is a great tool, and it's easier to learn Sketch than to learn InDesign if you're just starting out. Another great tool to design is Adobe XD, Experience Design. It's kind of a new tool, and it tries to beat Sketch, but I'm not sure if it's going to happen. And what it is good at is prototyping. Basically, you can create layouts with working buttons and input fields and show it to your client or test it yourself. Photoshop, everybody knows Photoshop. Has been around for ages, and if you're good at Photoshop, there's nothing wrong with designing websites in it. And there's nothing wrong with designing in Google Chrome with HTML and CSS. If you have the understanding of the project, and if you're your own client, like I did with my latest theme, I had the wireframes, I had the idea, and it's really, it was really fast to create the website with HTML and CSS right away without trying to design all pages, because I had the idea in mind. So fun mistakes to avoid that I wanted to share, because so you don't make them. Wow, this ribbon looks so cool. I need it on my website too. It was like my approach to designing my first theme, and basically it looked like some elements taken from all over the internet and like squeezed into one theme, and even my mom didn't like it. So you need to understand why you're adding this or that element to the design, because if it serves the purpose, if it helps to sell products or convert site visitors to subscribers, then go ahead and edit. If not, then maybe you should try something else. All right. I have designed 56 layouts of my minimal portfolio theme, and I need to design 23 more. Not ready just yet. This was my mistake when I designed Maker, one of my first themes that actually got released after the first theme. And I designed every single page for that theme. And I remember I spent like 3 months just on design. But if you think about it, if you have the style guide and you have the basic design for a single page, and you need to design, for example, a page for attachment, it doesn't take you much time to do it straight in HTML and CSS if you are developing your theme yourself. Maybe if you're working on a new version of YouTube, this is the right approach, but like for real people, like regular people like you and me, it's probably just going to steal your time. All right, I'm not sure what margin size to use, 1M or 1.125M, and I need to spend 3 hours to experiment. This really doesn't help and it probably doesn't matter that much. And if you come across a question when you design something, think of it this way. Does it help to sell products? Does it help to get new subscribers? This difference in the margin? If you can't answer straight away, probably there are two scenarios. First, it doesn't matter. And the second, you need to test it. And in both ways, you need to ship the product to actually find out. And the best way to find out is to get feedback from your, site visitors, people who download your theme. And I had 20 updates to Maker since something close to 20 since I first released it, and I did those updates based on feedback. And if I were to, if I tried to get everything right from the first time, it would probably not even get released by this time. So, wrapping this all up, I would encourage you to don't get too stressed about margins and ribbons and stuff like that, and keep the big picture in mind. So this is all I have for today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dmitry. We are in the very fortunate, luxurious position of having lots of room for questions. So I think let's go to the floor of questions. And straight away, we have someone at the microphone on that side, and then we'll come across to you, sir. So yes, over there at the microphone. Do you want to bring the house lights up a little, stage lights down a touch so we can see people? Because it kind of... Thank you. Brilliant. Yes, sir.
Right. Thanks so much for your talk. Super interesting. Question that I have is... you mentioned that you run a theme shop, so could you talk a little bit about what went between releasing your first theme and making your first sale?
How did it feel like, or what's exactly the question?
What went into it? What do you have to do? How was the setup? Like, how do you go from that to selling?
How did I get from 0 to the first sale? There was like a long way of doing things over and over again, and in a very painful way, because first I wanted to release a theme on one of the marketplaces, and then I got rejected multiple times because the idea of creating simple themes is not like the most popular nowadays. So what I thought that I can create my own theme shop and create a sample version of the first theme, and then create a pro version of this theme, and to basically give the sample version for free. And if people liked it, they would want to upgrade. And this is how it went. And it took me about I don't know, half of the 6 months probably, maybe more, to go from 0 to building a theme shop and to building a theme, and then to the first sale. And it felt really, I don't know, I felt really happy when it happened, because I had this idea of building a theme shop, and then when it really happened, I couldn't believe it. It was like magic.
Could you tell us what plugins and tools you use to sell?
I use Easy Digital Downloads for selling themes, and for updating, I use EDD Software Licensing plugin, which helps to keep themes updated for paid versions of themes, because once people download them, they can use the license code that connects their website with my website, and then once the new version of the theme is released, they can just click update and it gets updated. This really helps to keep themes secure and up to date.
Awesome, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Nice little name check for EDD there. Get well soon, Brad. We know you've got a cold and you would be here. Take care, buddy. Right. So, you know he had a cold? It's terrible. Couldn't fly. Yes, question over there, sir.
Hi, Dmitry. It's Sami here.
Hi, Sami.
I have a couple of questions. They are kind of related. How do you pick what kind of niche theme are you building, and what kind of themes have been most successful for you?
So the first question is how I pick the niche, right?
Yeah.
With the first theme maker, it's a portfolio theme, I was actually like they say, scrape your own itch. I needed a portfolio theme that looked really simple and would work fast without like too many options. And I couldn't find the theme that I liked. I liked some layouts of themes, but I also thought that if I can create a theme for myself, I would probably, there probably are people who will want to use it as well. And it worked really well. I did create this first theme and used it for my own website. And yeah, this is how I picked the niche for the first theme. For the second theme, which is a theme for small businesses, is that also kind of related to the first one. I had a client who needed a theme for their event or some. I don't remember exactly what the event was, but the idea was that they needed a theme that could look like a landing page and that they could have multiple sections on the front page. And I thought that this idea is not like uncommon, and many people want to do the same and want to have the same website. And this is how Counter came to life. And yeah, and for the third theme that I released yesterday is also I wanted to ditch the portfolio because I switched to building themes and wanted to run a blog. And I created this theme for myself, and also my sister wanted to use it. So 3 themes came from the from the needs of me and my family and my clients. So I'm not sure what theme I'm going to build next, but it's probably going to be a WooCommerce theme because this is something that many people are interested in nowadays. And yeah. And what was the second question?
What kind of themes have been the most popular for you?
Well, at this point, the first theme that I released, Maker, which is a portfolio theme, is the most popular because I guess because it's simple and because it doesn't have much options, and it has like its own. There are certain people that are interested in this kind of themes, and I believe this is why it is more popular than the other themes. Thank you.
Another question over on this side. Yes, sir.
Hiya, thank you. Great talk.
Thank you.
You touched on this a little bit. I hear from folks that are new to development and design that they want to become the next Theme Forest or Mojo Marketplace rock star, and I was curious how you would respond to someone like that.
Well, this is a tricky question. Well, this is my opinion on going to Theme Forest now or other marketplaces. I might be completely wrong because I'm not selling themes on Theme Forest, but I think that if you want to be successful on Theme Forest now, you need to kind of have a team of developers and designers who would create like a big product, because this is something what I see is popular on Theme Forest. And themes that I like to build and themes from my favorite theme shops, like, for example, Array Themes, they are not doing as good as those that are on the top of the featured page on Theme Forest. But it doesn't mean that you can't create a successful theme shop without marketplaces, because if you have other business models, it will still work if you think of the ways how to connect with your audience, how to reach people who would potentially use your themes. So yeah, this is my take.
The follow-up to that would be, if they do pursue it and they're just starting off, what kind of design skills and development level and ability would they need to be successful?
On marketplaces?
Just in general, in actually being able to build a theme.
Well, I think that you need to understand the audience you are building a theme for and what kind of problems you are trying to solve with it. Because generally, people, what I see, people try to solve multiple problems at once. And this leads to themes that kind of don't solve anything. And if you target specific audience with small theme that solves a single problem, this is what I see is the best approach today. Maybe if you have a team of developers and you want to go pursue a general theme that does multiple things, then it's the way to go. But for me, it's niche themes, small themes that do one thing, but do this thing very good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any more questions from... Oh, yes, one more, yes, sir.
What kind of theme are you going to work on next?
That's tricky. I think it's going to be a WooCommerce theme. I really liked, I wanted to release it before the theme that I released yesterday, but I need to research more on what kind of WooCommerce themes are going to be best in the next few years, maybe. So yeah, it's probably going to be a WooCommerce theme.
Okay, thank you very much, Dmitry.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing those things. I have to be honest. As general design guidelines, a lot of the things you've talked about today in terms of building themes for selling themes, I think apply largely generically across any design and development work you're doing for clients, even in an agency context as well. And I love that rule of thumb of build the homepage last. Because the other thing is, it makes stakeholder management a lot easier if you can prove that your high traffic destination pages are already nailed and are on a good design first.
Yes.
It makes a lot of that stakeholder battles you get about homepages so much easier to deal with. So that was a fantastic talk again.
Thank you.
Let's catch up with Dmitry. You're around all tomorrow as well.
Yeah.
That'll be fantastic. Thank you to all our speakers today. Thank you to the fantastic work in transcription, in English, and in French. Thank you very much. And to the real-time audio translation people in their TARDIS. Thank you very much, guys. To the AV at the front and the back of the room, thank you very much. And the transcription people, if you do have an audio translation toolkit thingy, do remember to drop it into the guys on the desk at the back. Thank you very much. Thank you, our audience. We'll be back again tomorrow. Have a fabulous evening. It's a 9 o'clock start tomorrow, and you have 24 hours to find yourself some exceptionally sweet, chic, and I did say all this wrong, very nice 1930s Parisian clothes for the after party tomorrow. Have a fabulous evening. I'll see you tomorrow. Love you all. Bye-bye. Au revoir. À demain.